welcome back. We're your hosts, Nathan, and my beautiful wife, Mia,
Hey.
sharing the highs and lows of life as we travel through them ourselves.
Yep, that's right. So each episode, we are going to be unpacking what's working for us, where we're struggling, and how we're just leaning into God through all of that.
Yeah, and today we're diving into, firstly, what works for us and how that might not be exactly what works for you, and that's okay. Then we're going to be going over convictions versus sin and how our walk with Jesus might look a little different than yours, and that's also okay.
Yeah.
And the last thing is avoiding being stumbling blocks. Basically, being mindful of how our actions affect those around us.
Yeah, this is going to be a really good one. So we'll keep it real direct and hopefully give you guys some practical takeaways to use in your own life. So let's just get into it.
Absolutely. So to kick us off, we're not here to give you a playbook for life. What works for us might not work for you, and like I said, that's okay.
Yeah, one of our favorite verses is Joshua 24:15. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. We actually have that sign. It was hanging above the door frame in our living room. But that doesn't mean that you have to serve the Lord exactly the way that we do.
Right. I mean, so maybe your family does morning devotionals, or maybe you just pray together at night, maybe over meals. For us, we're reading this book, What Would Jesus Eat?
Yeah, we read that while we eat.
Right, yeah, and it's phenomenal. I can't really do it enough justice. Kind of sit down, and it's really fun for us to just go through as we're eating, homemade meals that are, naturally and just good for you.
Well, let's be honest. Sometimes what works for us
Right.
in one season doesn't work in the next. And with that being said, we'd love to hear what's working for you guys, or if you've tried something that we do, how it's going. Send us your feedback, because we love learning really from each other, from our friends, from our community, and we'd love to start learning from you guys as well.
Yeah, and like we've been saying, what works for us might not work for you. Maybe sitting down at a meal and opening a book just really isn't a feasible thing. Maybe you have, screaming toddlers around you, or you have, your husband or your wife's on a work call, and maybe it's not the best time to just read a book, right? So we completely understand, and just really just you got to find what works for you, especially in the season you're in.
Yeah, for example, right now, our time in the Word mostly looks like doing the Bible in a year through the Bible app. It gives us some structure, but also helps us to stay consistent, as well as just tracking where each other is at.
Yeah, right. And what's nice for us is that it's flexible. We can read it together in the morning or separately during the day and talk about it later at night.
Yeah.
It's really just kind of when we kind of get around to it.
Even the same with doing our 15-minute reading. So sometimes that looks like reading a book together for 15 minutes, and that's a paperback book. Sometimes that's listening to our two separate books individually for 15 minutes and then sharing what we learned individually. I think it's really about being flexible.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what works for us right now. I know for me specifically, when I'm at the fire department or I'm just out listening to a book on Spotify, it just really just is what works for me. I don't really have the time to sit down and really open that book.
Yeah.
And just really spend that kind of time. But again, like I'm saying, whatever works for you in this season, you have to figure that out, and you really just gotta hone in on that. And maybe it's doing a deeper Bible study or journaling your prayers, or the key is just find that rhythm that helps you connect with God and realistically each other.
Yeah, and just remember, it's not about checking boxes or doing everything every day 100%. It's really about, like you said, building rhythms that bring you closer to Christ and closer to each other, so that you're also not stressing each other out in that approach. And like we said, our approach to things might be different than yours.
Absolutely. We just got done reading this book, Habits of the Household.
Yeah, I love that.
Love it. It's a great book. It's about, raising, little kids up to, toddlers, and just basically and one of the biggest things the author really stresses is, again, not having strict rules that you have to follow day in, day out, because life happens, and we get it. Life absolutely happens. So like my wife said, finding rhythms and just kind of figuring out, what works today might not work tomorrow, and just being super flexible with it.
Yeah. So with all that being said, this next one might step on some toes, but let's go there. What God convicts me of might not be a sin for you.
Right, yeah, exactly. Romans 14:22 says, blessed is the one who does not condemn himself by what he approves. And basically, we each have a personal walk with Jesus and the Spirit, who works on all of us in different ways.
Yeah. So, for example, I might feel convicted about watching certain movies or listening to certain music, but it doesn't mean that it's wrong for you. The key here is really to just listen to the Holy Spirit, and also not to judge others for what God has or hasn't placed in their heart just yet.
Yeah, I mean, but to be on the flip side, it's not just an excuse to ignore what God is convicting us of.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's just like, it's not like a free pass. Like, all right, cool. Like, if you don't watch, anything secular or anything like that, it's not like, all right, cool. Like, no, that's not what we're saying here. Like, obviously you have to listen to God, and he's nudging you, like, go do something, like, go do it, and just trust him in that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not sure if you should do something, even if you feel an inkling like, oh, I feel uncomfortable, or you're uncomfortable watching it around certain people or listening to certain things around certain people, or really if you feel some type of way about it on Sunday after listening to a sermon and you're really on fire and you're so convicted about it, that's probably a good sign. But give yourself some time and some space, pray about it, journal about it, ask God for clarity about it, because he's so faithful to show you what you should and shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, kind of getting into our last segment here, avoiding becoming a stumbling block. Like, now, this can be, like, really tricky. Just because something isn't a sin for us doesn't mean it's not a sin for, loved ones or people around us. And the biggest thing is we don't want to cause someone around us to stumble. Yeah,
that's a big one, because kind of like to what we were just saying, it's like, if you feel convicted about listening to music or watching a certain movie, and it's, for instance, with a movie, like something super lustful, and someone you're with is struggling with a porn addiction or something like that, and you're like, oh, well, I don't care. Like, you watching that movie around them could cause you to be a stumbling block, even if it's not necessarily a stumbling block for you. And Corinthians 8:9 says, be careful, however, that the exercise of your right does not become a stumbling block to the weak.
Yeah, and I mean, a good example of that would be, let's say you like to drink. Like, I like to drink wine. Like,
I don't like to drink.
You don't like to drink wine?
When's the last time I had a glass of
wine? Well, that's
what
I'm saying. We don't drink it frequently, but, like, we do drink occasionally.
Okay.
Like, my 30th birthday, my wife got me 30
bottles. I wouldn't say I like to drink.
Well, yeah, I guess, like, we don't like to drink, to drink. Like,
I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, we're not alcoholics over here, right? Like, we do have, like, a glass of alcohol every once in a while.
Okay.
But my point here is, like, let's say, like, you're having a glass of wine with dinner. Yeah. That's fine. But let's say you're now out with a friend who struggles with alcohol. Yeah. And, like, they're a struggle, like, they, like, go out to party, maybe they're an alcoholic, or they have a past. In that situation, it's really not about your freedom. It's really about what's right and what's wrong in that situation. Good. If you're causing your friend to now, like, think about alcohol and, like, stressing about it and really just kind of causing them to struggle.
Yeah, that's good.
Like, that's wrong. And you have to be mindful of that. As a Christian, we are called to be mindful of those around us.
I feel like it does also make you come out of yourself, because it's not easy to give something up, but loving others well means putting their needs and their spiritual health above our preferences and what makes us comfortable or what we want to do per se.
Yeah, I mean, bottom line is, we got to go to God and trust him in all things. And, we have to keep basically, like, our side of the road clean.
Yeah.
Like, we got to pray for guidance and ask for wisdom and how our actions can, like, impact those around us.
Yeah.
So, like, we just can't, go through life with, blindfold on and just being like, all right, we'll figure it out. It's kind of like, that old saying of, like, a bull in a china shop. Like, you ever hear that one?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, like, you just go in, you'll just be smashing everything around you, knocking the plates off the wall. People were freaking out. It'd be, like, pandemonium, right?
Yeah.
But so we have to, like, be kind to those around us.
Yeah, so as we wrap up, here are some takeaways. Number 1 is what works for us, like we said, might not work for you, and that's okay. Second to that is to lean into your personal convictions and not to judge others for theirs. And lastly, just be mindful about being a stumbling block to those that are around you.
Yeah, absolutely. Most importantly, we got to keep our eyes on God, check in with him daily. And don't be afraid to check in with the people around you and just ask, like, how am I doing?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good test for that. If this episode, though, has resonated with you, or if you've got some stories about how you've navigated any of these topics, we would love to hear from you. So definitely be sure to reach out to us down below in the comments, or you could follow me and private message me on Instagram. My handle there is also @MiaAshmen.
Yeah, so thanks for listening to Deserts and Gardens. Until next time, walk in love,
live with purpose, and trust God in every desert and garden. See ya.